My name is Jason White, and this is Weird Reads, and today I am going to be discussing my top reads of 2024. Now, this was an interesting reading year for me. I had a great year reading. It wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. I remember thinking at the end of last year that I might be able to do a lot more reading this year, and I certainly did, but the numbers don't necessarily show it. I read over 80 books. I think by the time the year ends, it's going to be something close to 83 or 4 books, and that I think is the most I've ever read in one year. So that's good right there. But what's more remarkable, in my opinion, is that I averaged, I would say, about 17,000 words a year before this year. And this year, I did 10,000 pages. Did I say words before? I meant pages if I said words. But yeah, instead of that, I read 28,000 pages, almost 29,000, I think. That's a lot for me. I know that there's a lot of people in the fantasy world who can do that in at least half the year. They read these gigantic books, but for me, I don't. But I did read a lot of gigantic books this year, and that's why the books themselves is only like 83 or 84 books. If some of those thicker books were chopped down a little bit, I probably would have reached maybe even like 100 books. I don't know. There's some thick books in there, like over 1,000 pages. And that was insane. That's something I was kind of afraid of when I worked at the factory. But now I don't necessarily have to worry about so much. All right, I'm going to get into it now because I don't want this to be too long. I had trouble narrowing this down to just 10. So there's 20 books here. There's 5 honorable mentions and then 15 top reads. So it's basically a top 20 list. So here we go. My first honorable mention is Drowning in the Drink by Ryder de Boord. This book really delves into alcoholism in a way that surprised me because I didn't think it would go to the areas it did. And that's why it's here. It spoke a truth that really spoke to me. And I really enjoyed it. I think there was like the first third, I didn't enjoy quite so much. But once you move past a certain part, the book takes a lot more depth and it becomes way more interesting, in my opinion. And it begins to look deeper into addiction and what it's like to suffer from serious addictions. And that's what I took away from this book. I recommend all these. So you're going to hear me say I highly recommend this a lot. It's something I tend to do when I'm on doing these lists. I can't stop myself either. Okay, next up is The Fatal Mind by N.J. Gallegos. NJ, she's a doctor and she works in full-time, I believe, in emergency room. She's a busy woman. She sees a lot of crazy things. And this book, The Fatal Mind by her, I read, and I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. It goes into the emergency room type situations that you might find, where converters are stuck in certain orifices and whatnot. But it also has a story and a mystery. Not really a mystery. There's something going on. The story itself is about a doctor it's about a doctor and a nurse. The nurse is married to a man who's a professional basketball player, and the doctor is somebody who's been experimenting with a chip that you implant into somebody's skull that will help them with their migraine headaches. And so you can only imagine putting chips in people's brains, that how that could go wrong. And this definitely goes there. It has has a pretty interesting ending that I absolutely loved. Okay, next up is The Folly by Gemma Amor. I really enjoyed this book as well. Gemma Amor is a favorite author of mine. And The Folly is kind of her take on Daphne du Maurier. And what I remember of this book, it's about a woman and her father. The father just got out of prison for murdering his wife, which is his daughter's mother. And he claims this whole time that he never did it. And she, the daughter, stood by him in that. And, of course, certain things come to light. I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's a very short book. And they end up moving to this folly because it's free to live there, so long as they take care of the place. They even get food. So strange things start happening once they arrive at the folly. And it was just a fun read. It has kind of a crazy ending. And I really enjoyed it. I would say it's probably not Gemma Amor's strongest work. The writing felt maybe kind of rushed a little bit weaker than perhaps other books by her, but I still really enjoyed it. This one, the next one here, I'm currently reading and I'm absolutely loving it. That's why it's in the honorable mentions. After finishing it, I don't know if it would make the top 15 or not, but just the writing alone, I think, could do that. And that is You Can't Take It With You by Marcus Hawk. This is an interesting sort of Christmas vampire tale that it goes to many different eras in time. And it's very short too. It's only 222 pages. But it's about this man, Nolan, Mr. Nolan, who's dying. He's a rich old man and he is dying. And he's remembering his life. And then vampirism sort of comes into the story, and the story takes one heck of a turn once that happens. And it's like I said, the writing is really good, especially when you're going through Nolan's life. That in the wrong hands, that could be really boring, but Marcus Hawk makes it fascinating. I didn't want to stop reading that, honestly. And but thankfully, the writing is still really good when we get to the vampire stuff, and you just want to keep reading. I don't know how Marcus does that. I was thinking about inviting him on the channel to discuss maybe the mechanics of his prose, because he just makes you want to keep reading and reading. And he could become a favorite as well, honestly. I've read 2 books by him, by Marcus Hawk, and I've enjoyed both of them. So yeah, if this comes out before Christmas, You Can't Take It With You by Marcus Hawk. You know, I'm not there yet, but it feels like this book could become a sort of like Ebenezer Scrooge with a vampire take. A theme of that maybe runs through here. I don't know. I have to finish it before I come to that conclusion. But it's really good. I highly recommend it. And lastly, for the honorable mentions is Snarl by Eric S. Brown. I love Eric S. Brown's work. They're always just fun and short. You don't go into an Eric S. Brown story looking for depth of character. You go for the action and the craziness, and you get it here. The only thing I would warn you about is this is a book about dogs getting this virus that was made in a lab somewhere. And so the virus is designed to make dogs attack people. It's sort of like rabies, but maybe more efficient. And there's like maybe even something supernatural going on here, because those dogs, their eyes kind of glow red. I really loved this. It's just feral craziness. There's a scene with a dog and human intestines that I'll never be able to erase from my head. It's truly nasty. So if you like gore fests, I think honestly you're gonna love this book. It's short. It took me like 2 days to read it, and I could have read it in one. And like I said, the warning though, if you don't like harm against animals, then maybe skip this one, because there is a lot of harm towards dogs because, well, dogs are attacking people, and it's only natural to think that if something like this happened, you would, defend yourself. All right, now to the top 15 reads of 2024. Now, I put some rules on here. No double authors is one, and no short story collections. And not all novels were published in 2024. There's I think only maybe one on here. Maybe no, there's two. Two books in here I think were published in 2024. So here we go. At number 15, I have The Day of the Door by Laurel Hightower. I really loved this book. It involves like a reality show that wants to follow a family as they return back to their old home. And the home is reportedly to be haunted, and something tragic happened there a few years ago, like maybe a decade ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, but something bad happened there, and it was kind of well known, and that's why this camera crew wants to follow them back there. It's a good story. Again, sort of like with the Gemma Amore, I don't think it's Laurel Hightower's strongest piece, but it was still really good, and I still really enjoyed it. It was when I was going through my list on Goodreads, I almost forgot to add this. I just kind of skipped right through it as I was going through the books, and then I saw it, and I was like, oh no, I have to add that book. And so I added it, and I kind of want to move it up this list, but looking at what's there, I just can't. And so that makes me feel bad. But it's still here regardless, and I love this book. It's a great little fun, and it's very, like, the haunting itself is very aggressive. You're not going to be disappointed if you read this, if you like haunted house stories, I don't think, anyway. So give it a go. I really enjoyed it. All right, next up is number 14, and that is Tell Me I'm Worthless by Alison Rumfitt. This book it could have been up higher, but this book is so dreadful in a good way. It's dreadful with a point. And it's about a trans woman. And I don't know if I should talk about it too much, but it goes into a lot of politics. And from the point of view of a trans woman, and it's not good. If you want to understand what it's like to be a trans person, go read this book. You'll see all the anger and the hatred that's, a result of, not really a result of the anger is the result of the hatred that's pushed onto this character. And I think it's very timely, obviously, for very many reasons. Me talking about this book has probably lost me some subscribers on YouTube here, but that's just the way it is. I'm firmly, not to get too political here, but people are people. Why can't we just live and let live? There's absolutely no reason for a lot of the craziness that's going on in this world today. All right, next up is a book by booktuber that I was following almost from the beginning. I think she started her channel before mine, not too much before mine. Now I was supposed to talk to her just last weekend, but I ended up canceling because it's Christmas and everything is insane. I mean, everyone knows how insane it can get during the holidays, right? So we've moved our conversation to later, early 2025. And the book I read for it was a lot of fun. It's Final Dress. And I'm, of course, talking about Regina St. Clair. This book is about a young actress who she gets involved with the local theater as an intern. And it's her dream to become an actress. But she's, her job is to, clean the place, clean the costumes, get the actors' spaces ready for them, pretty much just anything they need. And certain situations arise where she's able to become part of the show that they're all preparing for. She makes some serious enemies on the way, and the whole thing ends up turning into a crazy slasher ending. Let's just leave it at that. This book is, again, it's a lot of fun. It's a slow burn. If you're really interested in the theater life, then this book is for you. It doesn't necessarily mirror these movies, but because of the content of working in the theater, this book, Final Dress, made me think of movies like Suspiria and Black Swan. It has a similar feel, mostly, I guess, because of setting, but it's still a great read and a crazy ending. And I really enjoyed the characters. The characters kind of flew off the page. Before this, I'd only read some of Regina's short stories, so it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to read this, and I'm going to read more by Regina. Look out for early 2025. Hopefully, we can get that interview up and going. It would be a lot of fun. Next up, I have Chasing the Boogeyman by Richard Chismar. This book I listened to, I think, before the summer, and I think Rachel from the Shades of Orange first recommended this book to me some time ago. I'm talking years here. She said that it would be right up my alley, and she wasn't wrong. I really enjoyed this book. This book is it's like part biography, part fiction. They have a name for it, and it's like autofiction, I think it's called. And it's really interesting. Richard Chismar, if you don't know who he is, he's behind the Cemetery Dance magazine, which is almost every single horror writer's dream to get into. He's also good friends with Stephen King, and they've written some books together, like Gwendy's Button Box, I believe. Anyways, Chasing the Boogeyman is a look at Richard Chismar's life if there was a serial killer, running around while he was a kid. And it's based off a lot of true stuff that happened to him. I think a lot of the serial killer stuff, though, didn't happen. But it's a great read. I'm looking forward to reading the second book, hopefully in this coming year. And at number 11, I have Come With Me by Ronald Malfi. This book is about a man who loses his wife suddenly. She's shot dead in a mall during a shooting, and of course that's going to bring about the story itself is about the husband who survives. He wasn't with her, but that's sort of the premise of the story, because when she goes shopping to the mall, she's like, "Come with me," and he said, "No, I'm going to stay and maybe sleep in a little bit longer," or something like that. And of course that was the last time he saw her alive, so the words "come with me" haunt him throughout the entire novel. So after her passing, he comes across some of her belongings that make him question everything he knew about her while they were married. And this takes you down a wormhole, or a rabbit hole, I should say, of what the hell is going on? What was his wife doing? And it turns out she was involved with some stuff. I'm going to leave it at that. This is a very good book, and it could have been up higher, but and I don't know, maybe it should have been, but I still really loved it. And again, I highly recommend it, especially if you're interested in Ronald Malfi. This might be a good place to start. It's not necessarily a horror novel. I would say it's more of a thriller, but it's very haunted. It feels like a ghost story, even if there are no ghosts. Or maybe there are ghosts. I don't know. You're going to have to read it to find out. In at number 10, we're in the top 10 now, is Sycamore by Ian Rogers. The reason why this is here is because I had so much fun reading this book. Sycamore is about a private investigator, a Canadian one at that. And I think I'm being a little biased here because this book takes place in around the area that I live in and grew up in. So it was really cool seeing all the towns mentioned in this book that I know and been to, and plenty of times have I been there. So it's not just Toronto. It's like up close to Barrie and Aurelia, and of course Sycamore itself is a is not a real town. But you know, when you're reading books like this, it's possible, right? Even though you grew up around here. So I had to look it up, and I was pretty sure that it was a fictional town because it's mentioned in the story that Sycamore has a population of 25,000 people, and any town that big would would be fairly well known. It's not just like a population of 2,000, a small town that you never heard of, even though you've probably driven through it like a handful of times. But Sycamore is about a private investigator who gets called. He's from Toronto, but he gets called to Sycamore to investigate a missing husband case. Now, there's a lot going on in this book, and a lot of lore regarding sort of what Ian Rogers is building towards, and that is his Blacklands. The Blacklands are like these portals that have opened up all across the earth. They're not very common. Let's just say there's 10 of them. Something like that. And what comes through these portals are monsters. And so these portals have to be guarded. And, to say the least, they have to be guarded. So this case may or may not involve the Blacklands. I don't really want to explain the book too much more because that would give things away. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of banter in this book, and that was another thing that made this book so much fun. So definitely check out Sycamore by Ian Rogers. I mean, the cover is just awesome as all hell. Next up is House, and this is at number 9, House of Bad Memories by Michael David Wilson. This book, it was surprising. Michael David Wilson, if you don't know, he is the host of the This Is Horror podcast. He's talked to almost all the big horror writers out there, including Dean Koontz. The only one he seems to be unable to get on the show is Stephen King, but that one right there is very rare. Stephen King is, unfortunately, he's winding things down in life, and that's very sad, honestly, in my opinion. But, it is what it is. He's like 77 years old. He's a realist, and he knows what's coming. We all do. Anyways, the House of Bad Memories is a crazy story that's about a man who gets caught up in these weird circumstances involving his sister. And this book kind of has a bit of a slow start too. But once it gets going, once certain things happen in this book, the tension just keeps getting more and more. The tension just keeps building and building until you almost can't take it anymore. And this book keeps changing too, like the tone. This book is one of the craziest books I've ever read, and it works completely. I absolutely loved this book. I can't wait to read more by Michael David Wilson, and I highly, you got to check this book out. Like it's absolutely, it's bonkers. Once it gets going, it's bonkers, and it hits you in the feels sometimes too. So definitely check that out. Next up is at number 8 here is The Mindworms by Nicholas Kaufman. Now this book is book 3 in the Laura, I want to say Palmer. Every time I want to say Palmer. I should really write this stuff down. But anyways, we'll just say Laura. The series is about, it's a medical examiner. You could almost see this series as a TV show. It's Laura Powell. I'm certain it's Laura Powell. I could be wrong. Anyways, she's a medical examiner, so it's a science-based series of investigations, and the Mindworms is one of the most goriest of the three that are out there. I don't know if Nicholas Kaufman's going to be making any more. I keep mentioning this in my videos, and he never answers me. But I know book 4 right now is not planned. At least I don't think it is. But Mindworms is like, if the series were to end, this is a good way to end it, because it's like an apex, a climax almost of not events. It's just the events within the novel. You can read these separately. You don't need to read them in order. And I would honestly say read the Mindworms, because it's kind of crazy. It's about, the title suggests what it's about. It's sort of like these worms controlling people's minds and leading to circumstances. We'll just say that, like, when you're hungry and you just can't say, you can't. Have you ever been that hungry where it seems like you're never full? Well, just imagine if that hunger is directed towards your loved ones. Let's leave it at that. The Mindworms takes Laurel Powell and to some extreme areas that made me almost gag in a couple of parts. All right, next up at number 7 is Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman. Now, this book is something else, let me tell you. Now, I listened to this on audio, and I would recommend doing that, because now, I guess that depends, because I thought I would hate it. The narrator narrates the voice as it probably should be narrated, because the narrator of the story itself is told by like a 7-year-old girl. And that's the biggest problem with this book, especially the audiobook, is because the narrator does really good, an excellent 100% excellent job at doing this, but she sounds too young. But the voice itself, I think, also sounds too young. Instead of a 7 or 8-year-old girl, you have what sounds more like a 4-year-old girl. And, that's only 3 or 4 years difference, but in the world of, childhood, that's a huge difference. That's an eternity of difference. So take that with a grain of salt. It's still spooky as hell, especially the audiobook. There's also a part in the middle that kind of dragged for me. Now, here I am having this on my top 10, in my top 10, and I'm tearing it a new asshole. I don't mean to. It's an excellent book. There's some really creepy parts, but there's parts that also kind of bothered me. But the parts that worked stand out. So it's about this little girl who has an other mommy. Think of Neil Gaiman's Coraline. But the other mommy is nowhere near what Coraline is, and this book doesn't even reflect Coraline at all. This is completely different. The other mommy is more like a haunting. Or is it like a demon? You need to read it to find out. But there's the first, I would say, quarter is really creepy. Then you get to that slow sort of middle. It's not really slow. It's just repetitive middle part. And then the ending. The ending is it's crazy. And it's very dark. Excuse me. All right. And at number 6, I read my first Rachel Harrison book. And coincidentally, it was the first one she published. And so at number 6 here, I have The Return, as aforementioned, by Rachel Harrison. This book I found to be a lot of fun because it has the one trope that I really love. And that is when somebody goes missing, not just for a couple of days, but like months or even years. And then they come back. And they come back changed. And this has that. A young woman, she goes hiking one day. She was having an argument with her boyfriend or husband. I think it's her husband. And one way she would calm down after a fight like that would be to go for a hike. But she never gets home. So a few years later, they pretty much in absentia, she's declared dead. And then I think like some time after that, she just returns on one of her friend's porches. And so, as you would expect, everyone's like, where the hell were you? But she won't talk about it. So her and her friends decide to do a weekend, getaway, to live like the old times, to catch up. And this is where things go terribly wrong. It's an awesome book. I loved this book so much. And I have read more by Rachel Harrison, but only one book. That's two I read from her in 1 year, so that's actually pretty good. Unless it's I read a lot of Stephen King this year. I'm not going to lie. I mean, a lot of Stephen King. But other than that, if I read 2 books by you in 1 year, that's you as an author, then that's pretty good. All right, next up was a first-time author for me, and it won't be the last. I'm looking forward to reading more, but this is, at number 5 here is Razor Blade Tears by S.A. Cosby. My God, I love this book. This book is so crazy. It reminded me a lot of like a 1980s action film with some present time situations, I guess. You wouldn't catch like the themes in this book in a 1980s action film. So you got like some of the movements that are moving today and gaining ground, and then you have the people fighting against them because people need to bitch about everything. So I'll just get into what the story is about. 2 fathers. They don't really know each other, but both are ex-convicts. And they're just trying to live their lives. They both have a son, and their sons ended up getting married. Like I said, they don't really know each other, these 2 fathers, but one day, the 2 sons are murdered on the street, and it looks like a hate crime. So the 2 fathers get together, and throughout the whole book, throughout their lives before this murder took place, they were kind of hard on their sons for being gay. And then after their murders, they come to regret the way they treated their sons. And their story arc is to sort of heal, to forgive themselves maybe, and to look at their sons in a different light. And of course, a lot of violence. There's a lot of violence. They really fuck some people up in this book. And it's great to watch, honestly. And in at number 4, I read this recently, and it challenged me. And challenged me in a good way, though. And I'm talking about Incarnate by Richard Thomas. This book is hard to talk about because it's as I mentioned in videos before, it is a little dense, but it's not so dense that you're going to be alienated just by the language. It's more the content, honestly. You're wondering what the hell's going on a lot of the time. And so you could almost call this a collection of 3 longer short stories, or maybe even 3 novellas or novelette length stories that are all connected, because it's all it is separate. So the first story is about an old man who lives in the Arctic, and he's a shaman, and he's a sin eater. What he does is when people die, or animals too, he'll take in their essence. I don't know if it's spirit or what, but he pretty much eats their sins and then barfs it back out and purifies the spirit so they can go on. It's like a purification ritual. And the second part, there's this rift too, where monsters come out of, and he's sort of guarding this rift from the monsters that can come through. The second is you go into that rift and you follow one of the monsters as they plod through a pretty long period of time, where the monster itself is a female. They have little younglings, and it's really hard to read this part because of all the shit that this poor creature goes through, all the heartbreaking stuff that this creature goes through. And then we return back to the village where Sebastian from the first story has died. I don't want to spoil too much here. I kind of spoiled that. But he's like his apprentice. And he has a different approach to the sin eating. He doesn't want to absolve people of their sins, but he wants to do something else with that. It's a very excellent read, and like I said, it's hard to talk about. It's very hard to talk about. It's one of the more original pieces of fiction I have ever read, and that's why it's so up here. It's not just the vision of this book. It's the way it makes you feel. My God, this book will make you feel, and the language itself, it like melted like butter on my brain. It's such an odd little book. I have to read it again. I need to read this one again. I need to know more. And yeah, like totally, man. We're in the top 5 here, and that's why this is here. I remember when I started it, I didn't think it was going to make the top 10 list at all, but by the time I was done, I was like, my God, this book has to be in the top 10. All right, top 3 now. At the beginning of the year, I was gifted an advanced copy of Gwendolyn Keist's The Haunting of Velkwood, which is such a good book. My God, this book is... it's incredible, honestly. It's not about a haunted house, and it's not about a haunted town. It's about a haunted community. And this community is blocked off from the rest of reality. You can't go in it. It's like almost like a misty fog that surrounds the town, and only certain people, I think, can go into it, and that's the people who come from there. And so this has been happening for years now, and it's kind of like a well-known thing, and people are mystified by the memory. And there's this, again, there's a camera crew who wants to investigate it, and the people who survived it, one of them is drawn back to it, and she and her ghosts, because she has some ghosts, she decides to go back because her sister is trapped there, and she wants to see if she can rescue her. So I'll leave it at that. It's a fascinating book. It's smothered in grays and deeper shades of gray and sadness, and there's also some funny stuff in here. It's a full book, and when I first read it, I thought it was going to make number 1, but I read a couple books more that really blew my mind, and so it has to be here at number 3. But at number 2 is a book that's been out since like 2015 or 16, and everyone, when this book came out, everyone was talking about it, and I wanted to read it too, but I never did, not until this year of 2024, and that is A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This was the year of television crews following people into their houses because of fucked up shit that happened in the past. And this book is no different. I'm sure most people have read this. Maybe not everyone. But I know a lot of people have read this book. And I came to it very late. Paul Tremblay is quickly becoming a favorite of mine. And Head Full of Ghosts is one reason why. This book is about 2 sisters. One of them claimed to have been possessed when they were younger, and so that's what the film crew is about. They want to investigate, so they go to the younger sister to talk to her and to make their movie and whatnot. And the film crew was there during the possession, and they did a TV show, and it was very popular. I don't want to talk about this book too much because the ending had me staring like at the wall for like a good 10 minutes as I tried to gather exactly what it was I was feeling. It was a punch to the gut. It was a serious punch to the gut, and like a knee to the face as you were bending down to clench your gut that was just punched. So good book, man. Excellent book. And number 1, I am cheating on this one a little bit, just a little bit. Number 1 book here took me all year almost to read, And that's because it's basically 7 books in one. But of course, I'm talking about The Dark Tower by Stephen King. Now, I'm putting the 7th book here as like a place marker for what I want. But I want to include the entire series because when you read these books almost back to back, it feels like one giant novel, in a sense. I marveled in past videos and podcast episodes how Stephen King was able to return to that world and keep the voice, not only of the characters, but of just the craziness. He doesn't let up. And this series, of course, took him a big majority of his life, 30 years or whatever, to write. And that's another reason why it's kind of complexing to me how he was able to return each time and make it feel like you were just reading the same book, but continuing the saga to a certain extent. Now, I have my favorites and my lesser favorites in this series. I might do a tier episode where I tier them, I don't know, or rank them. We shall see, because I'm still unsure. But the placeholder here, The Dark Tower, which is book 7 of the Dark Tower series, is the one that affected me the most, and I think for good reason. It's where we were going. There's some heartbreaking things that happen, and then there's some stuff that make you think and stare at the wall for different reasons than A Head Full of Ghosts did. You're staring at the wall this time with a sense of awe and wonder, and this book is gonna stain me for the rest of my life. All right, that is excuse me, sorry. That is my top 10. Not top 10. It was supposed to be top 10, but I couldn't. It's top 15 with 5 honorable mentions, so technically my top 20 reads of 2024. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will catch you guys the next time. So keep being safe, keep being weird, and most importantly, keep being creative, and I'll catch you guys next time.